Hi, everyone. I'm Hilburn Michael, your 2022 GRRA president, and welcome to our second First Tuesday luncheon of the year. I am thankful that every one of you is with us today. Today is the 62nd anniversary of the February 1st Greensboro sit-in movement that started at F.W. Woolworth. The passive resistance ignited a movement across the country and inspires us to this day. The store is now the home of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. And if you have not visited our museum downtown Greensboro, I highly recommend that you do. Prior to COVID, the museum had approximately 70,000 visits per year. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because February is Black History Month, and we have in Greensboro, we played a very important role on the civil rights movement. We have a great program for everyone today. Our guest speaker is Police Chief Brian James from the Greensboro Police Department, and today's sponsor is Brooke Michael with Elite Inspection. So thank you for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Sophia Crisp for our cares and concerns.
Good afternoon, everybody. GRRA extends its condolences to the family and friends of the following individuals. Tom Aravian with Allen Tate Realtors, father Christian Aravian, passed away on Thursday, January 13, 2022. Letice Tish Cody with Allen Tate, her mother Eva Lofton, passed away on Saturday, January 15, 2022. Former member Ray Coble and his wife Barbara passed away respectively January 23rd and 24th, 2022. Mr. Coble was the brother of John Howard Coble, former U.S. Representative for North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. His son Brian Coble is a current member of Coble and Company. GRRA member and friend Jean Burkhead passed away on her birthday, January 24th, 2022. A contribution has been made to GRRF in memory of each family member. Please keep these families in your thoughts and your prayers. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to wake up this morning and be in our right minds and have the activity of our limbs, Lord. We thank you for and bless you. Thank you for, the work that we are able to do in the community as we serve families in purchasing homes and establishing lives, Lord. We want to bless this day and bless the speaker that's here to speak with us today. In your name we pray, amen. And now I will give you a brief introduction of our speaker. Chief Brian James joined the Greensboro Police Department on February 16, 1996, serving in various roles with the department, including Police Neighborhood Resource Center, Criminal Investigators Division, Training Division, Resource Management Division, and the Bureau Commander of the Support Bureau, Investigative Bureau, and the Patrol Bureau. James was also involved in numerous community engagement roles, such as a past chair of United Way's African American Leadership Cabinet, board chair of the Malachi House, and past vice president of Guilford Child Development. The Greensboro native is a graduate of Page High School, holds a bachelor's in business administration from North Carolina A&T State University, and an MBA from Pfeiffer University. He is also a graduate of the FBI National Academy, the Administrative Officers Management Program at NC State University, and the Senior Management Institute for Police. Chief James is happily married with 3 beautiful daughters, and I know them all, they're all beautiful. He's a mentor in the African American Male Initiative and currently on the Guilford Merchant Association Board. Please welcome my friend, Chief Brian James.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And I appreciate the great introduction. I've known Sophia for a number of years, and we're members of the same church and a good family friend. So I appreciate you inviting me to speak today. I really appreciate that. I just want to talk about more of a conversational tone today, and we'll take some questions at the end if that's appropriate. But just talk about my first few months in office and just a little bit about myself. as been said, I grew up in Greensboro. This is where I achieved my foundation. This is where I got a majority of my education, and I'm certainly proud of that. And what it shows is that every child in this community can grow up and excel and achieve their dreams, because I certainly have, and I'm very appreciative of that. The first few months in office, actually today is my anniversary at 2 years as chief. And first few months, you have a lot of big plans. We went out into the community, we spoke to a lot of people, and about 6 weeks in, the pandemic hit. And obviously we're still affected by it today as we're doing this virtually. But we had the pandemic that set in, which certainly altered police work, because what I always talk about is that the lifeblood of police work is relationships. So as we were trying to go out in the community, suddenly we were told, don't go out in the community because we don't want to spread the virus. So we were dealing with that. Then we had the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which sparked protests in the city. And we certainly had to deal with that, which damaged police and community relationships. So as we were trying to build on relationships we had and create new ones, all of a sudden, everything was in jeopardy. So after a couple of months, we just decided that we had to go back out into the community. And literally, we went door to door and we talked to people in the community to try to rebuild these relationships. Fortunately, what we found out is that many of the people in the community still wanted us in the community, but certainly they wanted good, not just good policing, but great policing. So we went out into communities and we reestablished a lot of those relationships. What I did personally, and what a lot of my command staff did, is we went out and we did over 100 combinations of panels and conversations with various community members. And that went a long way to try to reestablish a lot of the trust that we felt like we may have lost because of some of the national things that were going on. So as I speak here today for the Realtors Association, I thought about how do we connect what you all do to what we do in the community. And one thing I've learned is that we're all interconnected, and oftentimes we're trying to achieve many of the same goals. And so what I'll tell you is that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I grew up on the northeast side of town in Woodmere Park. And I was born in 1970, so please don't do the math, but I was born in 1970. And at that time, it was a funny time in Greensboro. The community was still very segregated. And I'll tell this story, I think it's appropriate, this being February 1st, the first day of Black History Month. So Woodmere Park along the Phillips Avenue corridor, it was built around the mid-50s. And in the late 60s, some of the first African-American families moved into the community. And so by the time I was born in 1970, my parents bought that house in 1968. Literally the whole community had transitioned to an African-American community. And we all know that a lot of things were going on during that particular time. And it's funny how small the world is. So years later, I was playing football at Page High School, and one of my coaches there told me that he actually lived in the house that was next door to my house growing up. And so he said that what happened is as everybody started to move, there was a lot of pressure for the current residents to move out of the community as African-American families were moving in. He said that they literally moved out of the community into an apartment. And what happened during that particular time was that white families that lived in the neighborhood, they were selling their houses probably at that time, maybe no more than $10,000 or $12,000. And I think my parents, when they first bought our house, they bought it for $15,000. And it quickly transitioned that neighborhood over a period of time. But what I'll say is this, that's just a history of that particular neighborhood. And that happened in a lot of places across America. Greensboro was not unique to that. But this is what it did for me. And my mom literally still lives in the same house. That home ownership was very important in my family because, first of all, my mom and dad were actually the first people in our family to actually own a home. And what that did for me personally was that it gave me and my sister stability throughout our lives. And oftentimes what I see now and today is that in communities where you don't have a lot of home ownership, sometimes those communities tend to be some of the most high crime communities. And so we talk about how does home ownership impact overall crime and overall poverty. It has a huge impact. And that's why realtors play a big role in helping people to achieve that dream of actually owning a home. When I grew up on my street, if I remember correctly, I think everybody on that particular street actually owned their home. And that was huge because everybody felt like that they had something invested. And for most people, I know certainly for me now, my home is my biggest investment. It's the most valuable asset that I own. And when you actually own something, you tend to care about it more, and you care about what happens to you and of course your neighbors and things like that. And I grew up in a very close-knit community rooted in home ownership where all of the adults on the street held us all accountable. And myself and most of my close friends, we all turned out okay. And I like to think that I turned out okay. And certainly that neighborhood played a big role in what I was able to do professionally as a police officer and eventually moving up to the rank of chief of police. But again, the stability of the home is so important, and that home ownership is very important as we try to affect and reduce the crime in neighborhoods and also to make those neighborhoods safe. So as I was growing up and I started to work, I actually started out working with the Guilford County Sheriff's Office. One of the things that my mom always said to me was, you need to buy a house as soon as you can. You just buy a house, buy something. Because what she knew was that home ownership was really a cornerstone to success and to financial stability. And so as soon as I could, when I was in my late 20s, I was with the police department by then. And I think I was making a grand total of about $28,000 a year. But I was able to purchase my first home, which was huge because later on, my wife and I, we sold that home for a little bit more than we paid for it. And we rolled that into another house. And then we lived in that house for a number of years. And then we were able to take equity out of that house and roll it into the house that we currently live in. And that's oftentimes how working folks are able to build wealth and to have some financial stability, but also have an investment stake in the neighborhoods that they live in. So as we talk about that, we think about, does everybody have that opportunity? And oftentimes the answer is no. Now, sometimes it's not because people don't want to own homes, but simply because they may not have the financial means, or even if they got the financial means, they may not have the knowledge and the education about real estate that they need in order to purchase a home. Because oftentimes what I hear is that people can purchase homes, they just don't know that they can. And that's where I think realtors come into play, is by educating the public on how they can actually own a home, because it certainly is the cornerstone. If nothing else, it's a tax write-off. And I know everybody likes to try to reduce their tax obligation as much as possible. But also, again, it creates ownership of not just your home, but ownership of that neighborhood. If you own your home and you have an investment there, you care about what's going on in your neighborhood and what your neighbors are doing. So as we look at what's going on in Greensboro right now, we've had two big announcements, economic announcements. The mega site, which will house the Toyota battery plant, that is coming in the next few years. And then also the announcement at the airport with the boom technology, and they coined the phrase now, Greensboro, Greens booming is what they're saying now, which is, I think, a great slogan. But what we have to make sure is that it actually is booming for everyone, that everyone that wants to, that's willing to put in the work, it can take opportunities that are presented and actually improve the overall condition of our city. So when we talk about that, I look at the fact that these jobs are coming, and from an educational standpoint, we need to make sure that people have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to actually occupy these jobs, because what will happen is that people will come from other places to assume these jobs. And we want to make sure that the people that live here right now have an opportunity to actually take some of those employment opportunities that will come and then reinvest in our community. And that's what we're hopeful for. And when we talk about reinvestment, we talk about home buying. We talk about investments in real estate and investments in neighborhoods. And that's so important. So as we look at what can happen from a realtor standpoint, education, again, is very important. Like Sophia, the Housing Consultants Group is huge in our community in helping people achieve their dream of home ownership. And what she has done with her group for years has been phenomenal in this community. And it has actually affected and changed neighborhoods in a positive way. And we need to think about how we can individually affect that. One thing that we have done at the police department, we created what we call a resource coordinator. And we did that about 1.5 years ago. And what we were trying to do and what we're still trying to do is connect people to resources, because when we talk about making cities safe, it's not all about police going out and arresting criminals. Now, that's certainly part of what we do, but a big part of what we should be doing is trying to address the root causes of crime and what makes our city unsafe. And when we talk about root causes, we're talking about poverty, we're talking about housing, we're talking about food insecurity, we're talking about employment, we're talking about education. And there are different ways that we all can affect that. And certainly we have to look at how we can think outside the box. So what we did is we created a mechanism for our officers, if they go into a situation where somebody is in need of particular resources, they do a referral to our resource coordinator, who in turn connects them to what they need. Now, it may be that housing is an issue. So could a realtor be a resource in this resource tree that we're trying to build? Absolutely. Because again, I believe personally, based on my own experience, home ownership is the key to community stability and also a big key in community safety, because people certainly have a vested interest in a neighborhood when they own a piece of it. So as we move forward, trying to make the city as safe as it can possibly be, we certainly need partners like the Realtors Association to help us with that, because there are things that have to happen outside of police work that make our community safe. And I certainly think that this organization can play a part in that. Although I'm sure that you're already doing great work in the community, and I know for a fact that you are. But as I look at my own organization and what I think about daily is, I think about what are we doing, and also think about what we can do better and can we improve upon that. And whatever organization you're a part of, you can always think of things that you can do better and things that you can do more effectively. So what I ask is for the Realtors Association to partner with us, not just with the police department, but with the city, and think about things that may be done either now or in the future that can positively affect communities. But also, I'm sure that that one of your goals somewhere in your organizational rules or bylaws is that you want to increase home ownership in the Piedmont Triad community. So we hope that your efforts will be successful. We'd like to see increased home ownership, especially in some of our neighborhoods that suffer from disproportionate crime, because we think that will certainly impact those neighborhoods and make those neighborhoods a lot safer. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. Again, I want to thank Sophia Crisp, who actually invited me to speak a few months ago. And I just want to say that Greensboro is a great place. I was raised here, I was educated here, and I was able to become a police officer and eventually work my way up to be the chief of police, which is a dream for me, because certainly when I first got into it, I never thought that I would end up being the chief of police, but it happened. But it happened because of a strong community. It happened because of my neighbors and friends all around me. And that strong community was rooted in just regular, average working folks that owned homes. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and certainly if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
The first thing, your Woodmere Park story seemed to resonate with several of our members, including we had one of our members that actually owned a home during a similar time frame that you were there. But the first question that I see comes from Tracy, and she says, "How can we best support the police and the police department? I guess as realtors and as our organization."
Okay, could they hear the question when you answer?
They should be able to hear me. The mic's over there.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure they can hear the question.
Sure.
What I would say is that, and I kind of alluded to this, we got to think outside the box. And when we're talking about forming partnerships and galvanizing resources, there are a lot of people who may have the ability and have the desire to own a home, but they simply don't have the person that can walk them through the process. And I do believe that home ownership is a cornerstone to creating safe communities. What I'll tell you is this. I mean, again, I said I bought my first house when I was about 20. I was 27 years old when I bought that house, and I was making about $28,000 a year. And I thought, I'd probably be renting for the next until I got, some more money, some more income coming in. But there was a realtor that walked me through that process and showed me some programs that were available. And I was able to scrape together about $5,000 for a down payment. And I was a homeowner. And that really started, a cornerstone to my own stability as far as trying to build some wealth and able to resell that house later and buy another house. But I think that to find ways to get into communities that you don't have a relationship with at this point. And that's what we try to do all the time is, we've got a lot of supporters, but oftentimes I'm more interested in how do we connect with people who we don't connect with that well. And I think there's some opportunities to connect with a lot of communities that may benefit from home ownership.
Okay, the next question, what challenges are you having currently with staffing? Is this impacting the crime levels in the city?
Staffing has been a challenge, and currently we've got approximately 50 actual vacancies in the department, and we have a number of other people who are on the payroll, so to speak, but they're in a training phase. So right now I've got about 30 people in the police academy. So staffing is a challenge. One thing that we have tried to do in the last year is we recently increased our pay for police officers coming in, but as we increase pay for starting police officers, we have to actually move the entire pay structure. And oftentimes people say, well, can't you just bump up the pay? Like, you could do that, but what will happen is you'll have new officers making more than officers that have been there for 2 or 3 years. So you have to move the entire salary structure, which is expensive. The challenge for us is that we've got a number of jurisdictions and municipalities all around us. So oftentimes when we move our pay structure, then somebody else is looking at that and then they'll move their pay structure. So we're in a constant competition for high quality candidates. I'll say also in the last couple of years, it's been tough in policing. And I think that a number of people who may have thought about going into police work have probably thought otherwise. So our candidate pools are starting to shrink. And so we've got to figure out how to make policing a desirable profession again, because despite everything that has happened, it is still a great profession. And there's a lot of opportunity to positively impact communities from a police perspective. So it certainly, and I will say this, the second part of the question, I think it has impacted crime. Because certainly when we don't have as many officers on the street, we can't have the visible presence that we need in some neighborhoods. And at some point, it could impact our response time. So we are constantly working on that through overtime, supplemental overtime, and things like that.
Yes. Okay. So we've had a couple of questions about more aggressive drivers since the COVID-19 pandemic, with the potentiality of not being pulled over. Is that something that the police department is seeing, more aggressive drivers during this time frame? Is there a struggle with that?
Yes. Yes, there is a struggle with aggressive driving, and we see it all the time. One of the challenges has been that going back to our last question around staffing. So what happens is if you're short staffed, then oftentimes when you have police officers that are working just a regular shift, they're being dispatched to calls a lot more often, more frequently per officer. So we don't have the amount of, oftentimes we don't have the amount of discretionary time that we would like to do things like traffic enforcement. So we have tried to, through a number of different ways, we do have a traffic enforcement unit that works based on complaints. We also work based on high accident locations, but then also we work through the Governor's Highway Safety Commission on a number of different projects that we do around DWI suppression. But I will say this, yeah, the speeds have increased. Last year in Greensboro, unfortunately, we often talk about homicide rates, but we actually had a fatality rate last year in Greensboro. I think we had 53 fatalities caused by motor vehicles, and a number of those fatalities were actually pedestrians. So we have struggled in the traffic area, but again, we've got to figure it out in Greensboro, but this has been a nationwide issue, and a lot of cities are dealing with this post-pandemic with the speeds.
So the gun violence seems like it's increased throughout the city. We had a shooting down the block not too long ago. What's the effort to deal with the gun violence? Is there any programs? Is there any buybacks? What's the police department doing to deal with gun violence?
One of the main strategies we have is we focus on repeat offenders. And so we have a number of units, a number of tactical units that work on a daily basis to identify those repeat offenders and make sure that they're held accountable for their actions. Another thing that we've done is based on statistical analysis primarily, is we look at the areas where we have the most crime. And last year, we actually had a record year. We seized over 1,900 guns in 2021. In 2020, we seized 1,200. So it was a significant increase in the number of guns that we took off the street. What I'll say also is that a lot of people say, where are the guns coming from? That's a good question. They're trafficked a number of different ways. But one thing I'll tell you is that a number of the guns that are subsequently used in crimes are stolen from cars that were purchased by law-abiding citizens. So what I would ask is, if you are a legal gun owner, please secure your weapons, because we do have a number of guns that are stolen out of cars each year, and they subsequently end up in the hands of criminal offenders. So we have that going on. We also have a program called Gun Stoppers, where we pay through our Crime Stoppers Fund various amounts of money in cash anonymously. If you know someone that's either illegally possessing or using a firearm, and you call in, that number is 336-373-1000, 336-373-1000. If you call Crime Stoppers, you can anonymously tell us if someone is in possession or illegally using firearms, and we'll follow up on that. And if it leads to an arrest, we pay out cash rewards. You can also call that number for any crime that's occurring in the community.
Okay. Is there a plan to restart community ride-alongs?
Yes, and I had that plan ready to go January 1st, and unfortunately we started with this Omicron variant of COVID. So we do plan to restart it. We had to, of course, reassess what we were doing, but our plan was to restart it on January 1. But obviously in the middle of some of the highest positivity rates for Guilford County, it just wouldn't be wise for us to do it at this time. We, of course, have had a number of COVID cases within the police department as well, which has put a strain on staffing, and we're still kind of reluctant to put people in the cars that we don't absolutely have to for the safety of everybody involved.
Does Greensboro have neighborhood watch programs, police, community relation groups that meet regularly?
Yes, they do. So we have a number of community watch programs throughout the city. Many of those have been affected, of course, by the pandemic, but many have moved to virtual, some have moved back in person. But we have a community resource officer that is assigned to every district of the city. So if you don't have a community watch, what I'll encourage you to do is if you go to gsopd.org, that's gsopd.org. If you go to that, it'll have the city broken down into police districts, and every community has a CRO that will help you get a community watch started if you don't have one.
Peter, we've probably got time for one more question.
Okay. And then I would say we have definitely some more questions that we can email to an appropriate person to get some answers.
That's fine, yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
So a question was, what can we do to lower our crime rates? I'm assuming as not only citizens, but realtors. So anything that we can take on that would help lower crime rates in the city?
I'll go back to some of my earlier comments. I think when you look at neighborhoods that have low home ownership rates, I think it's a couple of things. It's a opportunity to help transition that neighborhood to home ownership, but then there's also an opportunity to improve the quality of life, because I do believe, again, I think when you have a majority of home owners in a particular neighborhood, I think those neighborhoods tend to be safer. So I would say let's all try to think outside the box, and let's think about places that we could affect as far as home ownership, but also think about are there opportunities to create education around home ownership? Because I think what will happen is if there's more access to education about home ownership, I think that many of those people that take advantage of that education will be some of your future clients and help them to obtain home ownership. And ultimately, I think it reduces crime.
Okay, great.
Right. Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I enjoyed learning more about you and about what you're doing in Greensboro. We do have something in common. I also was at Page High School.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit older than you are, but I think
Probably not.
I think we were there at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you for all that you're doing for Greensboro and to make our city a safer place. And with all of the challenges that we have today, we're happy to have a partnership with the police department and to have a relationship with you. So as a token of our appreciation, we are donating a book in your honor to Hunter Elementary School, which is our adopted school. It's called Each Kindness. And we are just so appreciative of you being here. So thank you very much. So next on our agenda, we have a special award to be given. This is a carryover from our awards luncheon in December. So now I'm going to call on Marcina Jones to come and present our next award. Marcina.
Good afternoon. As Hilburn just stated, my name is Marcy Jones. I am the owner of Homogeny Realty. And today I am presenting the William D. Sewell Senior and Junior Award to a very special person. This person is a leader, a strategist, a teacher, a visionary, a consultant, a team player, and a real estate mastermind. All right, raise your hand in the chat box if you know who this is already. All right, still need to look a few more hints. This person has served on various boards and volunteered with projects on the state, local, and national level. To say that this person is a self-motivated go-getter is an understatement. This person is a member of the illustrious Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And if I had to guess, her favorite colors are most likely pink and green. She loves Girl Scouts. She is a resilient trailblazer and truly has a heart for her community. This person is a financial literacy guru and believes that home ownership is possible for all. She is an amazing mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. This person is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Go Heels! She is the executive director of Housing Consultants Group and works tirelessly alongside her amazing team to provide education and down payment assistance to residents across Guilford County. in order to ensure that home ownership is possible for all. It is truly an honor and a privilege for me to present the William D. Sewell Senior and Junior Award to none other than Mrs. Sophia Chris.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, I don't know what I'm saying.
Get your speech in.
Those of you that knew my mother know I always have something to say. So thank you very much. It has been my honor and privilege to be a part of this association. For this year will be my 29th year. Yeah, I started when I was 5. So but I'm always happy to help people, always happy to encourage home ownership. It's very fitting to be here on February 1st, speaking after our police chief about what home ownership did for him. It did the same thing for myself and my brothers. And I do believe it's how you create the path to generational wealth. So it's an honor to serve. Thank you.
Congratulations, Sophia. I cannot think of a person who's more deserving than you. So thank you for all that you do for our association. And I'm looking forward to working alongside you this year and next. Next, I want to turn the program over to Betty Smith, who is going to say a few words about professional courtesies.
Here.
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Betty.
All right, I'm not sure why my picture's not showing, but that's probably a good thing. We'll talk about professional courtesies here. Most of it is common sense, but sometimes we let our customers and prospects and clients push us into doing things that are not necessarily respectful to our peers. And first and foremost, we want to have respect for the public. We always want to follow the golden rule, and maybe even beyond the golden rule. Do more for others than you would do for yourself. Maybe use the more word than as you would do for yourself, because we really are held to a much higher standard. We should always respond promptly to inquiries and requests for information. And I hear this a lot from people saying that they don't get callbacks from realtors, that it may be days before they hear something from a realtor. Schedule appointments as far in advance as possible. In today's market, the frenzy to show is puts you in that position anyway, but be respectful of the time allotted for your showing. If it's a property that only allows 15 minutes, then go inside first, look through the house completely, and then that will give you any extra time you might need outside. So just think about that. It's trying to be courteous and respectful to the people that have the home listed, but also to your peers. Before entering any house, please ring the doorbell or knock on the door. You never know who might be in the house or what might be going on. And it's just really a good safeguard for you and anybody in there. Don't talk to the seller other than just common courtesies. You're typically a buyer's agent in there, and they're represented by a seller's agent. I know most of the time the seller's not there, but if they are there, you should not ask them questions that would be inappropriate for a buyer agent to be talking directly to a seller. And of course, we know don't criticize the property, and ask your clients if the seller is present not to criticize the property. Inform the seller when you leave, say thank you if they're there. At first substantial contact, ask prospective clients if they are working with another agent. This, of course, would have happened before you're showing the property. And if there's any issues or anything that's going on, please communicate clearly to your fellow realtor. And if you talk to a seller or a buyer, don't use jargon such as FISBO, MLS, those kind of things, because those are not terms they're familiar with. Be aware of all your deadlines and meet them. Promise only what you can deliver, and please deliver what you promise. Be aware and respectful of cultural differences. Focus on the client you're with and do not talk about other clients. Remember, the buyer or seller you're with is the only client at that moment. To be successful in business, mutual respect is essential. Even if the other agent, whether it's the buyer or seller's agent, even if they come across cocky or arrogant, don't let that determine who you are. You be the person that takes the higher road and have respect for everyone. Stick to your area of expertise. If someone asked you to go to Raleigh to show property, make sure that you are capable and have the expertise to do that. If you don't, there are plenty of realtors that you can ask to refer the client to. Then respect for the property. We all have to figure out when we're going to show where we're going to park, and if our client's coming or if they're in multiple cars. Sometimes neighborhoods are very tight. This is a conversation to have with your client prior to arriving at the property. Especially, I went to an open house this weekend, and I think there was probably about 100 people there. And residents in the neighborhood were upset because people were parking in front of their mailbox or blocking their driveway. So, you've got to be respectful of that. Protect the combination codes and keys. Never, 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 ever, ever, ever share codes or access information with buyers. And a buyer must always be accompanied by an agent when visiting a property. And it doesn't matter if this is a vacant property. Now, sometimes in new construction, you'll talk to the listing agent and they'll say, feel free to go out and look at the property and let your buyers go out and walk through. So that's fine. But anything that's built close in has a combination or a super box on it, then that is a clear signal to you as the agent. You must be there. When finished showing, make sure that you turn off lights if those are the directions. In today's market, a lot of times our directions are to leave the lights on because there's multiple showings. And so it really sort of messes up the flow if they're very short showings if you turn off lights. And of course, shut anything that you open. If you open a window, close the window. If you unlock the window, you lock the window. Just common sense there. And if you're asked to reset an alarm system, make sure you do that. Be considerate of the seller's property. Your client should not be eating and drinking and definitely not smoking in someone else's home. If they carry any trash in, then they should take it out with them. And it's your responsibility to see that that's going on. It's also your responsibility to keep up with children. And so either you instruct your buyers to do that, or you yourself offer to watch the child, as you're going room to room. But that's very important. A lot of accidents happen to children when they're unattended, especially in a home that's not necessarily arranged for children. And when you leave, if there's anything wrong, let the listing agent know immediately. And if your clients ask you if they can take pictures of the home, get permission for that. That is not automatically acceptable. And a schedule appointment each time you go to show a home. Just because you have the code and directions doesn't mean that you can go in without making an appointment. It doesn't take that long to make an appointment, so make sure you always make an appointment. Respect your peers. This is, again, common rule again, and I think we just always try to be better than that. But if the agent is showing a home when you arrive for a showing, do not take your clients in on top of that agent. You let the agent know you're there. Find out if they will finish looking inside and then go outside so that you can go in. Always be very courteous. Always use very nice tones. Never use an angry tone with one of your peers. And do not leave a business card. That is an old habit that was created many, many years ago, but now it's considered solicitation. And so you should not do that. But please do give feedback. One of the most annoying things in the world for a listing agent is for the people, the agent showing, not to give feedback, and give good feedback, reasonable, but always watch your language. Don't use anything that's not appropriate. So if you find something incorrect in the MLS, please notify the listing agent. And do that as soon as you could, because you would want somebody to do that for you. If there's going to be a home inspection, schedule it as soon as possible. But remember, as the buyer's agent, you are responsible to be at the home inspection unless you get permission from the listing agent to not be there. But an agent should always be in the home with a buyer when they're in the home. And if the seller should show up, again, no questioning the seller inappropriately. And then all the things in the contract, the due diligence repair and request, the additional earnest money, all those things should be done as they are represented in the contract on time. If you're doing additional earnest money, that's supposed to be certified funds. So, make sure that you're doing what the contract says that you are supposed to do. This is not a place for shortcuts. And one of the things that realtors agree to in our code of ethics is to never disparage a fellow realtor. Now, I know that's a hard one, really hard, because sometimes they do things to make you feel very angry and upset. But if you're going to disparage a fellow realtor, just go in your quiet place and do it, but don't share it with the rest of the world, because that only makes you look bad. Anytime we point a finger at someone else, there's one pointing back at us. And we don't prospect at other agents' events. This is just almost hard to believe anybody would, but we don't do that. And we would never say anything on social media about negative about another agent, company, or clients for that matter, or any properties that you've shown. Do not take social media lightly, because that is an area where a lot is said that probably should not be said. So mind your manners there. Again, communicate with all parties in a timely manner. If an agent is called and asked you questions, please get back to them, get back to your clients, and just stay. Communication is key to everything. Obey the sign ordinance for whatever municipality you're working in. And then presenting and working offers. Here, it is just really important that you have good communication and that you're prompt in your communication. And all the things when you're submitting offers are attached. If it requires a pre-approval letter or verification of funds, if you've got a cash buyer, go ahead and send those with the offer. During the negotiations, always listen completely to the other parties and hear completely what they're saying before you want to jump in and start debating what the best thing is for your client. If you're responsible for holding checks, make sure that they get delivered to the other agent. And if you're the agent who is holding earnest money, make sure you deposit it in a timely manner. And then as far as presenting offers and giving out information, remember you have to represent the seller's best interest. And before giving out any information to other agents about any kind of offers, the seller has to give you permission, and I would suggest you get that permission in writing. In all things, be honest with all parties. That is really important for a trust between each other. And don't forget, due diligence checks are made to sellers and delivered to the agent by the effective date. And all offers should be presented until closing. So are there any questions about any of that?
So, Betty, thank you. That's a lot of wonderful information and professional courtesies that we all need to remember as we are going out and doing our job in this very busy market. When you made the comment about the open house, we might have been at the same open house this weekend. Yeah, it is crazy out there, but thank you so much. And we are thrilled that you are the chair of our professional courtesies, professional standards committee. So, oh, there you are.
Yeah,
So
here I am.
thank you. Yes, thank you for that. We
You're
appreciate it.
Okay.
So just a few general announcements. I want to remind everyone that the final GRRA billing payments are due February 15th. So that's coming up in just a few weeks. So if you have not paid in full, make sure that all of your payments are in by February 15th. Also, very important reminder that the Guilford County Tax 2022 real property reappraisals will be issued on February 15th. As realtors, we are going to get a lot of questions, so prepare for a lot of phone calls from your past clients. We need to be acquainted on how this is going to affect our property owners, clients, et cetera. And as we get these questions, have discussions in your office about how you're going to respond, talk about where this money is going to go. It's going to help pay for our new schools and things that are coming down that pipe. So just make sure that you're aware.